Beneath the uncountable stars of the 41st millennium, there are places that mortals were never meant to tread. Worlds of iron and fire, where titans stride, seas of the warp, where demons whisper, and labyrinthine cathedrals of stone, where candles flicker against the endless dark. Among these secret places stands one greater mystery still, one so hidden that even the Imperium of Man speaks of it only in hushed tones. It is not a fortress, nor a shrine, nor a world. It is a library, yet no ordinary library of parchment and ink. It is a vault of thought itself, a citadel of forbidden memory, known only as the Black Library. The Black Library is said to lie beyond the reach of mortal maps, outside the boundaries of time and reason. It is whispered to exist within the immaterium itself, the warp, that endless sea of thought and nightmare, yet not consumed by it. Hidden within the webway of the Aeldari, the ancient race that once ruled the stars, the Black Library is a realm apart, shielded by wards older than human empires. Within its shadowed halls lies knowledge vast enough to unmake galaxies. The true names of demons, the secrets of the gods of chaos, the prophecies of endings yet to dawn. The Imperium knows only fragments of this place. Its inquisitors whisper of it, hunting rumors like wolves through ruins and tombs. The Ordo Malleus, charged with the defeat of demons, dreams of its halls, believing that within lies the key to mankind's salvation or destruction. Even the Space Marines, champions of the Emperor, know it only as a myth, a legend spoken by psychers whose minds have glimpsed too much. But to the Aeldari, the dwindling, sorrowful remnants of a people who once walked as gods among the stars, the Black Library is real. To them it is a bastion against damnation, the last reservoir of wisdom salvaged from their empire's ruin. When their civilization collapsed in lust and madness, birthing the chaos god Slaanesh and sundering their pantheon, they gathered what lore they could and hid it where even she who thirsts could not follow. Thus was born the Black Library, not a place of pride, but of desperation, a fortress of memory to guard against the endless night. The Harlequins, masked wanderers of the Aeldari, are its keepers. They dance across the galaxy, telling stories that are both performance and prophecy. They alone walk its halls freely, guided by Kagurach, the laughing god, the last of the Aeldari deities unconsumed by Slaanesh. To the Harlequins, the Black Library is both stage and scripture, a vault where every tale of chaos, every secret of the immaterium is preserved. Tonight, we journey into that hidden place. We will not step there in flesh, for no mortal may. But in memory and myth, in whispers and shadows, we may glimpse its story. We shall walk the path of its guardians, trace the sorrow of its creation, and listen to the endless murmur of its shelves, where every page is a fragment of eternity. This is the tale of the Black Library, a secret citadel of lore, a beacon hidden within shadow, a reminder that knowledge itself may be salvation, or the deepest damnation. Chapter 1. Before the Hidden Vault. Before the library was ever conceived, before the shelves of forbidden memory were bound in wards of eternity, the galaxy was already ancient. Stars had lived and died in silence, scattering their bones into the void. Planets had been birthed and extinguished, some leaving no trace but a faint glow upon the firmament. And yet, through all this measureless time, there was more than matter. There was the warp, the immaterium, the realm of thought, dream, and nightmare. The warp was not created by mortals. It existed before they raised their first fires. It was the sea of the soul, a dimension of pure energy where every thought, every hope, every terror of sentient minds flowed and gathered. When the first minds began to dream, the warp stirred. When the first fears took root, the warp grew turbulent. And when the first prayers were whispered, powers beyond mortal reckoning awoke within its depths. In those ages, the first great builders of civilization were not mankind, nor the Aeldari who would come after, but the Old Ones, an ancient race so advanced that even myth struggles to capture their likeness. They strode among the stars as architects of species and shapers of destiny. They guided fledgling races, weaving their souls into patterns that would endure. It was the Old Ones who taught the first paths through the warp, not as crude navigation but as a symphony of resonance. They laid down the first foundations of the webway, a labyrinth of stable tunnels through the immaterium, where ships could travel safely without touching the madness beyond. The Old Ones understood that the warp was not merely energy but reflection. That thought shaped it, and it in turn shaped thought. They foresaw that races attuned to the warp might one day rise into greatness or fall into ruin by the very strength of their own souls. So they cultivated species whose psychic resonance was strong, preparing weapons and heirs for wars yet to come. Among their greatest works were the Aeldari. To them, the Old Ones gave beauty beyond measure, intellect surpassing all others, and psychic sensitivity unmatched in any race before or since. The Aeldari were born to feel the warp as easily as mortals breathe, their very souls like flames dancing in its currents. From their earliest dawn, they shaped reality with thought, crafting wonders with the ease of artisans and bending energies with instinct. For uncounted millennia, the Aeldari grew beneath the guidance of the Old Ones, not yet aware that their destiny would be both glory and ruin. But where there is creation, there is also opposition. For the immaterium was never silent. From its depths came predators, entities born of fear and hate, hunger and lust. These were the first demons, manifestations of emotion so intense they took form. In time, as civilizations spread and wars raged, these entities grew into gods, each embodying a primal truth of existence. Khorne, the lord of rage and bloodshed. Nurgle, the patron of despair and decay. Tzeentch, the architect of change and deceit. And lurking, unborn but inevitable, was Slaanesh, the god of excess, whose coming would one day devour the Aeldari themselves. The Old Ones fought against these rising powers with every art and weapon at their disposal. They armed their creations, the Aeldari, the Krork, who would later become the Orcs, and others, with the means to resist the demonic tide. Yet even their brilliance could not hold forever. In wars so vast that suns were extinguished as pawns upon a board, the Old Ones faltered. Their enemies, the Necrontyr and their soulless Necron legions, allied with the C'tan, star-born devourers of energy, against them. Between the cold hunger of the Necrons and the storming tides of chaos, the Old Ones vanished into myth, leaving their works behind. It was in this aftermath that the Aeldari rose to prominence. Freed from their makers yet still wielding the legacy of the webway, they became the inheritors of a broken galaxy. Their empires spread like wildfire, their artistry reshaping whole systems, their psychers wielding powers that lesser races could scarcely comprehend. They strode like gods, and for a time they truly were masters of all they surveyed. But even as they triumphed, the seeds of tragedy lay within them. For the warp was not merely a tool, it was a mirror. The Aeldari, so vibrant in soul, so prone to passion, stirred its depths more deeply than any other race. Their emotions rippled into the immaterium, feeding the gods that slumbered there. Every triumph, every indulgence, every hunger they pursued left echoes. Where other species left faint ripples, the Aeldari carved storms. It was during these first golden ages of their empire that whispers began. The Harlequins, who would later become guardians of forbidden knowledge, tell in their tales that even then, before decadence consumed their people, there were those who foresaw danger. Seers and mystics spoke of a shadow unborn, a hunger not yet named. They warned that the Aeldari, by their very nature, would one day give birth to a power that would consume not only them, but all who lingered near. These warnings went largely unheeded, for who could fear when the stars themselves bent to their will? The Aeldari built cities that glittered like constellations, their pleasure domes outshining suns, their fleets crossing the void with grace no human vessel would ever match. They lived long lives, their artistry boundless, their wisdom profound. Yet beneath the beauty, the storm gathered. In time, the Aeldari pantheon of gods became not merely figures of reverence, but anchors of identity. There was Asurion, the Phoenix King, ruler of their deities; Isha, goddess of fertility and healing; Kayla Mencha Cain, the bloody-handed war god; and Segorach, the laughing god, whose jest would one day outlast all others. These gods, unlike the silent emperor of mankind, were real, their forms visible in the warp, their actions interwoven with myth and reality alike. But even gods may die. When the doom of the Aeldari finally came, their pantheon would shatter, their worship devoured, their temples left hollow. Only a few, through trickery or fate, would endure. Among them, Segorach, whose laughter still echoes in the Black Library, guiding its guardians with riddles no mortal can unravel. Thus, before the library itself, the stage was set. A race gifted beyond all others, burdened with souls that burned too brightly, walking a path that led toward inevitable catastrophe. And in that path, as the shadows thickened, there grew the first glimmers of a plan. That if the Aeldari were doomed to fall, some fragment of their wisdom must be preserved. Somewhere beyond the reach of demons, beyond the hunger of the gods, there must be a place where memory itself could endure. That place had no name yet. No walls, no shelves, no guardians. Only a whisper of intent seated in the minds of those few who understood what was to come. A vault beyond the warp, a citadel of thought. A library, black as night, to endure when the stars themselves faltered. Chapter 2. The Aeldari Empire Without Rival. There was a time when the galaxy belonged to the Aeldari, not in fragments, not in scattered dominions, but in near totality, where now the stars flicker with the banners of 1,000 species, where the imperium of man claws for survival across 1,000,000 worlds, there once stretched only the dominion of the Aeldari. They did not rule as conquerors, though their strength could have crushed any foe. They ruled as artisans, as architects of perfection, reshaping the void as a canvas for their desires. Their civilization was not a chain of planets held by crude engines of war, but a living constellation of wonders. Across the stars, their craft sang into being gardens upon lifeless rock, oceans upon barren moons, skies where none had existed. Theirs was not colonization in the crude sense, but orchestration. Entire systems bloomed at their touch, planets flowering like jewels set in the crown of empire. Mortals who saw such worlds would have believed themselves in the presence of gods, and in truth, the Aeldari were near enough to divinity. What allowed them such mastery was not mere technology, though their machines were beyond comprehension, but their intimacy with the webway. This ancient labyrinth, left from the age of the Old Ones, was more than a network of passages through the warp. It was a dimension apart, shielded from demonic intrusion, a highway across the galaxy where time flowed more surely, where distance collapsed. To most races, the warp was a storm of peril. To the Aeldari, it was a corridor of light. Their vessels glided through it with elegance, never touching the madness beyond. Through the webway, they were not bound by the slow crawl of real space. They could be everywhere, and so their empire was without borders. In this age, the Aeldari pantheon of gods walked beside them. Isha whispered comfort in the gardens. Kurnus, the hunter, roamed in dream and myth. Kala Mensha Cain was invoked when war was necessary, though war grew rare, for who could challenge such a people? The Phoenix King shone as sovereign of their divine order, and the laughing god, Sagorak, danced between them all, mocking, warning, delighting. To live in such times was to live in harmony of flesh and spirit, for the Aeldari did not merely believe their gods existed, they felt their presence in the warp, as constant as sunrise. They built cities the size of continents, spires woven of living crystal, domes where stars themselves were captured and held. Their fleets were not crude ships of rivets and steel, but arcs of beauty, vessels that glided like birds across the firmament. To walk an Aeldari city was to see art made into life, music into architecture, poetry into stone. Their mastery was so complete that survival no longer concerned them. All that remained was the pursuit of desire. And here lay the seed of their undoing. For in perfection they sought sensation, in abundance they sought excess, and in their endless hunger for experience, their souls stirred the warp as no other race could. Where humanity's emotions flickered like candles, the passions of the Aeldari burned like suns. Every joy, every indulgence, every cruelty echoed across the immaterium. In their height of glory, they were also sowing their ruin. Yet in this time, the warnings were faint. Their empire stretched so vast, their mastery so complete, that none could imagine its fall. The Aeldari lords guided whole populations toward pursuits of artistry, philosophy, and pleasure. Their armies, once forged for defense against the horrors of the old night, lay idle, their weapons polished but rarely raised. For who could stand against them? Humanity was then in its infancy, scattered and fragile. The orcs, brutish and countless, were but irritants. Even the Necron tombs lay slumbering, their dynasties forgotten. The galaxy was theirs, and none could gainsay it. The Harlequins, in their performances, tell of these years with both reverence and sorrow. They depict the dances of artisans whose brushstrokes remade landscapes, the symphonies that shaped whole seasons, the philosophers who turned their thoughts into realities. Yet they also weave foreshadowing into every gesture. A raised hand becomes a claw. A step of joy becomes a stumble into shadow. For in hindsight, all know that the empire was not eternal, but already trembling. Some among the Aeldari saw the truth even then. The seer castes, attuned more deeply than most, spoke of turbulence in the warp. They warned of storms building, of hungers not yet born but inevitable. They cautioned that the indulgence of their people was not without cost, that every excess rippled into the immaterium, feeding something vast and unborn. These voices were dismissed as pessimists, as shadows upon a bright dawn. Who would listen to prophecy when surrounded by perfection? And so, the Aeldari continued. They abandoned restraint, for restraint seemed needless. They created vessels not only of travel but of ecstasy, ships devoted to endless revel. They crafted whole worlds into theaters of sensation, where every art, every indulgence, every cruelty could be pursued. The pleasure cults grew in power, their rites no longer fringes but central to society. What had once been balance between flesh and spirit became gluttony of both. Still, amid the growing tide of excess, there were guardians of memory. Quietly, scholars and visionaries began to hoard records of darker lore. Tales of chaos, long dismissed as myth, were gathered. Accounts of demons, once spoken only in caution, were written. The early fragments of what would one day become the Black Library were seeded in these years, not as rebellion against their empire, but as an act of preservation. For some few knew that knowledge must be safeguarded, lest all be lost when the storm finally came. Thus, the empire of the Aeldari stood, radiant beyond compare, decadent beyond restraint, a realm without rivals. They believed themselves immortal, their gods eternal, their dominion everlasting. Yet, in the warp, the unborn god stirred. Every indulgence was its nourishment, every cruelty its feast, every ecstasy its breath. The Aeldari thought themselves safe, but they were already shaping their destroyer. And so it was that the Black Library was foreshadowed not in ruin, but in triumph. It was not created when their empire collapsed, but conceived in whispers during its golden height. For only when the light is brightest do shadows take form. Chapter 3. The Birth of She Who Thirsts. The age of Aeldari glory ended not with a single battle, nor with the strike of an enemy's blade, but with a scream that shook the galaxy. It was not the cry of a dying world, nor the echo of some titanic engine's ruin. It was the birth wail of a god, one born not in the stars but in the souls of a people who had burned too brightly. For millennia, the Aeldari had indulged without restraint. Their civilization, secure and vast, knew no hunger, no threat, no boundaries. In that peace, they turned inward, seeking ever greater heights of sensation. What began as art and philosophy became indulgence. What began as worship of life became obsession with experience. Across their worlds, cults of pleasure rose in prominence. The pursuit of perfection was abandoned for the pursuit of ecstasy. They were a people adrift, and every excess poured like fuel into the warp. The immaterium is shaped by thought. Where other races left ripples upon its surface, the Aeldari carved waves, storms, tempests. Their passions were too great to vanish into silence. Their hunger for sensation, their lusts, their griefs, their cruelties, all of it gathered in the warp like a rising tide. For ages, this tide swelled, unseen, unacknowledged. Seers who glimpsed its gathering were dismissed as fearmongers, their warnings lost amid the laughter of pleasure halls. At last, the tide broke. From the accumulated excess of an entire race was born a god, vast and terrible, embodying all they had poured into the warp. She emerged as She Who Thirsts, whom mortals would call Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, the Lord of Excess, the youngest of the ruinous powers. Her birth was not gentle, it was cataclysm. When Slaanesh awoke, her first breath consumed souls by the billions. Entire populations of Aeldari, across the heartworlds of their empire, died in an instant, their spirits torn from their flesh to feed her hunger. Palaces collapsed into silence, cities fell into dust, fleets drifted unmanned, their crews extinguished like candles in a storm. It was not war, it was obliteration. Worlds that had thrummed with life became mausoleums in a heartbeat. The echo of her birth was felt far beyond the Aeldari. Stars trembled, the warp convulsed, vomiting forth storms that sundered navigation. Even the galaxy's ancient dead stirred in their tombs, roused by the psychic wound that tore across reality. Where once there had been only the silence of the void, there now yawned a wound so vast that it remains unhealed even in the present age. The Eye of Terror, a permanent scar where the warp bled into real space. In that storm, the Aeldari pantheon perished. Their gods, real and living within the immaterium, were devoured by the newborn deity. Isha, mother and healer, was swallowed. Though in some tales she was spared and imprisoned, her whispers still reaching mortals through plagues and cures. Kurnus, the hunter, fell. Kyla Mencha Kane, The bloody-handed god fought, but was shattered into fragments. His essence, broken into countless shards, fled into avatars that would one day walk the battlefields of the craft worlds. Only two survived whole. One was Aeneid, the god of the dead, unborn but whispered of even then. The other was Segorach, the laughing god, who tricked Slaanesh and slipped into the labyrinth of the webway, laughing even as his kin were devoured. Thus, the Aeldari were broken. Their empire, once spanning the stars, was reduced to ash and scattered remnants. Those who dwelled at the heart of their civilization were annihilated, their souls lost forever to the thirst of the newborn god. Only those who lived far from the empire's core survived, the Exodites, dwelling on remote worlds where decadence had not taken root, and the craft-worlders, who had abandoned the excess of their kin and set sail upon great world ships into the void. These few remnants would preserve their people, but they would never again be as they were. Amid this ruin, one fragment of foresight endured. There had been those among the Aeldari who understood dimly that something vast was stirring. These visionaries, guided by seers and by Segorach himself, had gathered forbidden lore, grim prophecies, and the deepest secrets of the warp. They had hidden these within a bastion not of stone, but of thought, concealed deep within the webway where Slaanesh's thirst could not reach. When the fall came, and their empire collapsed, this bastion endured. Thus the Black Library was born, not in triumph, not as the proud culmination of an age, but as a desperate refuge of knowledge. Within its halls, guarded by wards even demons could not pierce, was stored every record of chaos the Aeldari had gathered. Its shelves were filled with the truth of the ruinous powers, their names, their natures, their deceptions, and their weaknesses. It was no temple, for it was not a place of worship. It was no archive of glory, for it did not preserve triumphs. It was a vault of warning, a fortress of memory to preserve against the doom that had claimed their kin. The guardians of this place were chosen carefully. The Harlequins, servants of the laughing god, became its wardens. Masked and enigmatic, they danced across the stars, weaving tales that both entertained and instructed, warning the survivors of their people never to forget the price of indulgence. They alone walked the halls of the library freely, preserving its secrecy from all others. To outsiders they gave riddles and jests. To those deemed worthy, they offered glimpses of its lore. To the Imperium of Man, the fall of the Aeldari was incomprehensible. Humanity was still young, its empire shattered by the long night, its knowledge primitive compared to Aeldari grace. Yet even they felt the echo of the catastrophe, though they did not understand it. In their histories, the sudden rise of warp storms that ended the age of technology and ushered in an age of isolation was but coincidence. But in truth, it was the scream of Slaanesh's birth echoing across the void, closing the stars themselves in mourning. The Aeldari called their doom simply the fall. To them, no other name was needed. It was the end of their empire, the death of their gods, the birth of their destroyer. From that moment onward, they were no longer rulers of the galaxy, but survivors haunted by their past. And in the heart of their sorrow, hidden in the webway, the Black Library waited. Not salvation, but remembrance. A secret citadel of knowledge in a galaxy where ignorance had birthed a god. Thus, the first great purpose of the Black Library was clear. It was a bastion against forgetfulness. For the Aeldari could not allow themselves to forget the price of their excess, nor could they permit the younger races, should they rise, to repeat their folly. The library became a beacon hidden in shadow, a paradox of secrecy and preservation. It was not meant to be found easily, nor to be opened freely. It was meant to endure, inviolate, even when empires fell. And so, amid ruin, the library endured. The Aeldari Empire was gone. Their people were scattered. Their gods were slain. But memory remained, bound in shadow, guarded in silence. And that silence has never lifted. Chapter 4. The Gathering of Forbidden Lore. The Black Library was not, in its first moment, the grand citadel of legend. In the earliest days after the fall, it was little more than a sanctuary, a thought-born vault where fragments of Aeldari prophecy, warnings of chaos, and the testimonies of seers had been concealed. It was a shelter built in desperation, meant to outlast the scream of she who thirsts and preserve what little their people could. Yet, in the centuries and millennia that followed, it grew into something far greater. The Harlequins, those masked dancers of the laughing god, became its keepers. To outsiders they appeared as wandering performers, mocking tyrants, delighting crowds, and weaving tales of tragedy and mirth. But their true purpose was solemn beyond measure. They were the guardians of the Black Library, the only Aeldari permitted to walk freely within its shadowed halls. Their performances, so elaborate and strange, were not mere art. They were encoded histories, parables concealing truths of chaos, warnings taught through rhythm and dance. Where words might falter, story endured, and the Harlequins became its messengers. As centuries passed, the library expanded. Knowledge was drawn into its vaults not only from the Aeldari, but from across the galaxy. Whenever a demon was banished, its name was recorded. Whenever a cult was discovered and broken, its rites were catalogued. Whenever a new weapon of the warp revealed itself, its nature was inscribed. The Harlequins scoured the stars, gathering fragments of lore wherever they were found, and returned them to the vault. Even the Inquisition of Man, though sworn to secrecy, contributed unknowingly. Their conflicts with demonic powers left scars upon worlds that Harlequins studied in silence. What mortals burned to ash, the Black Library preserved. The vault itself was not a place of matter, though mortals often imagine it so. It did not exist upon a planet, nor in any galaxy-bound location. Rather, it was hidden deep within the webway, beyond doors sealed with wards of unimaginable complexity. To reach it was nearly impossible, for the Harlequins guarded every path, testing every seeker with riddles, trials, and plays of fate. Those unworthy were turned away, their memories clouded, their journeys forgotten. Only the chosen few, marked by destiny or by Sagorak's jest, ever set foot within its shadow. The library's halls were said to be endless. Some described them as shelves upon shelves of books, tomes of crystal and parchment bound in light. Others spoke of corridors of living memory, where each step revealed visions of battles fought, demons banished, worlds consumed. For the Black Library is not bound to mortal form. It is a place of thought, and thought shifts with the mind that perceives it. To a human, it might appear as a maze of tomes. To an Aeldari, as rivers of starlight. To a demon, though none have entered, it would be agony incarnate. The Harlequins tell that every secret of chaos is contained within. The true names of demons by which they may be bound, the hidden histories of the ruinous powers, their first whispers and their greatest lies, the fate of the old ones, whose war seeded both chaos and mortality, prophecies of endings not yet dawned, of rifts and calamities still to come. The library is not merely a record of the past, but a chronicle of futures, branching like trees of crystal, each path a warning, each vision a thread of possibility. Yet, not all who sought the library desired it for wisdom. Some hungered for power. Among the Aeldari, there were always those who believed that by mastering the lore of chaos, they might control it. To them, the Harlequins gave only scorn. For the library is not a weapon to be wielded. It is a mirror, showing the ruin that comes of arrogance. Those who sought it for conquest never returned, or were broken by what they saw within. Even so, seekers came. From the Imperium, inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus whispered of a hidden vault where the secrets of demons were kept. Some believed entry into its halls would grant them the means to end the long war against chaos. Others sought only to confirm its existence, for to prove the Black Library real would be proof that knowledge itself could endure beyond the reach of the warp. A few were granted audience. Most were denied, their memories unmade by Harlequin blades or laughter. The craft world Aeldari regarded the library with reverence and dread alike. To them, it was both hope and curse. Within its vaults lay the record of their people's folly, preserved as warning. Within it, too, lay the prophecies of Iniad, the god of the dead, whose coming might one day free them from Slaanesh. For this reason, many among the seer castes looked to the library not as a forbidden place, but as a beacon. Yet they too were barred from its depths unless the Harlequins deemed them worthy. The Guardians' riddles spared none, not even their kin. In time, the library grew to become more than a vault. It became a fulcrum of balance between secrecy and revelation. Its guardians did not hoard its knowledge entirely. They revealed fragments when necessity demanded. A demon, banished by a mortal, might have carried its name first from the lips of a Harlequin, whispered in jest, yet deadly in purpose. An inquisitor might receive a riddle that led them to victory against a cult, never realizing the hand of the Black Library had guided them. In this way, the library fought its war, not with armies or weapons, but with secrets deployed as carefully as blades. It was in these millennia, after the fall and before the rise of mankind's Imperium, that the Black Library became what it is now remembered as. The great vault of forbidden knowledge, hidden within the webway, sealed from chaos, guarded by dancers who wore tragedy and comedy as masks. It was not the creation of a single moment, but the accumulation of ages. Piece by piece, fragment by fragment, it grew, until it held within it not only the sorrow of the Aeldari, but the warnings of the galaxy entire. For the truth is this: knowledge is not merely preservation, it is also resistance. Every secret recorded in the Black Library is a denial to chaos, a refusal to let memory be lost to corruption. The Aeldari may have fallen, their gods may have perished, their empire may be dust, but in the library their defiance endures. And so, through every age of war, through every turning of the stars, the Black Library has gathered its lore. Not as treasure, not as weapon, but as remembrance. In its silence lies the echo of all that was lost, and in its endurance lies the hope that loss may not be the end. Chapter 5. The Harlequins, Keepers of the Veil. The Black Library has no doors that can be broken, no gates that can be forced. Its walls are thought, its vaults are dream, its shelves are memory itself. And yet, for all its intangibility, it is not undefended. Its guardians are not armies of steel, nor fleets of warships, but a troop of masked wanderers, dancers of eternity, known to all as the Harlequins. The Harlequins are unlike any other branch of the Aeldari, where the craft worlds preserve themselves through rigid paths of discipline, where the Exodites hide amid the wilds of remote worlds, where the Drukhari wallow in cruelty to stave off their doom. The Harlequins are free. They walk every path and none. They are warriors, yet also actors. They are priests, yet also tricksters. They are killers, yet also storytellers. Above all, they are servants of Segorach, the laughing god, who alone escaped the devouring maw of Slaanesh when the Aeldari pantheon fell. To understand the Harlequins, one must understand their theater. Every performance is more than a play. It is ritual, memory, and prophecy bound into one. Their greatest tale is the dance without end, a retelling of the rise and fall of their people, the birth of She Who Thirsts, and the survival of the laughing god. Each Harlequin dons a mask to embody a role: the warrior, the seer, the king, the outcast, the trickster. These masks are not merely costume, they are identity. When a Harlequin dons a mask, they become the role, their personality subsumed into the archetype. To watch a performance is to watch history itself retold, and to glimpse fate as it yet may unfold. The Harlequins are tireless in this duty. They wander the galaxy, performing upon craft worlds, within hidden exodite shrines, even in the heart of Kamara, the city of the Drukhari. Wherever Aeldari still live, they bring their tales, but their purpose is not merely to entertain. Each story carries warning. Each jest conceals a lesson. Through performance, they remind their people of the fall, of the price of excess, of the shadow that ever waits. In a culture where memory is survival, the Harlequins are the eternal chorus, ensuring that no Aeldari forgets what must not be forgotten. Yet their role is more than memory. They are also warriors beyond compare. To face a Harlequin in battle is to face death made graceful. They move with the fluidity of dancers, their steps guided by patterns too complex for mortal eyes to follow. Their weapons are both elegant and lethal: shuriken pistols, neurodisruptors, the glistening embrace of the Harlequin's kiss, a monofilament device that can unravel flesh from within. To watch them fight is to watch a performance of death, each movement choreographed, each strike a line in a poem of slaughter. And wherever they go, the Black Library goes with them. Not in form, not in shelves carried, but in purpose. For the Harlequins are its emissaries. They guard its entrances within the webway, ensuring that only the worthy may pass. They test seekers with riddles, with duels, with plays enacted upon the spot. Those who falter are turned away, their memories of the journey wiped clean. Those who persist may be permitted a glimpse of what lies within, guided by Harlequin hand. The Harlequins themselves do not claim ownership of the library. They are not its masters, but its servants. They act as custodians, preserving what Segorak wills, revealing only what the laughing god permits. To outsiders, this seems capricious. An inquisitor may seek desperately for answers, only to be met with a mocking riddle. A seer may plead for prophecy, only to receive a jest. Yet in truth, every word, every gesture is purposeful. The Harlequins reveal what must be revealed, and conceal what must remain hidden. In their theater, there are no accidents. What lies within the library itself is shaped by their performances. It is said that when a Harlequin enacts a tale, its echo is inscribed within the vault. Their plays are not mere remembrance, but additions to the library itself. In this way, the Harlequins are both archivists and authors, ensuring that the Black Library is not static, but living. As the galaxy changes, as new tragedies unfold, so too do the Harlequins weave them into performance, and through performance into preservation. Among their number are figures of legend. The Solitaire is one. This Harlequin plays the role of Slaanesh in the Dance Without End, embodying the hunger of She Who Thirsts. To don this mask is to embrace doom, for the Solitaire stands outside the grace of Segorak. They cannot laugh, cannot rest, cannot know solace. They are shunned even by their kin, for they embody the devourer itself. Yet in battle, their ferocity is unmatched, for they channel the very terror that birthed their people's ruin. The Solitaires remind all Aeldari that their doom is never far behind, and that even in victory, the shadow of Slaanesh is always present. Another figure is the Shadow Seer. These mystics guide the troops, wielding powers of illusion and foresight. They weave phantasm and nightmare upon the battlefield, clouding the minds of foes, shaping perception into terror. In performance, they play the roles of seers and prophets, reminding their people of the warnings once ignored. In war, they are the mind that guides the Harlequin's blade, ensuring that every performance of battle concludes as it must. To the Imperium, the Harlequins are a paradox. They are Xenos, to be despised and purged. Yet they are also preservers of lore that the Imperium itself cannot ignore. Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus whisper of dealings with them. Strange encounters in shadow, where Harlequins revealed secrets that turned the tide against demons. Yet such gifts are never given freely. To bargain with a Harlequin is to enter a game whose rules are known only to them. A game where every jest may cut like a knife, and every laugh may conceal sorrow beyond reckoning. Through it all, the Harlequins endure. They are eternal wanderers, eternal performers, eternal guardians. Their laughter echoes where hope has died. Their masks glimmer where fear has spread. Their steps trace the same stories upon 1,000 stages. And when they return to the Black Library, they carry with them the memories of all they have seen, weaving them into the endless vault of forbidden knowledge. Thus, the Harlequins are more than guardians. They are the library itself, given flesh and mask, laughter and blade. Through them, memory is preserved. Through them, the library endures. And through them, the Aeldari cling to hope, even as their people fade into twilight. Chapter 6. The Shadowed Bargains of Inquisitors. To the Imperium of Man, the Black Library is a rumor cloaked in terror. In a galaxy where ignorance is survival, where knowledge itself is often corruption, the thought of a vault filled with the secrets of chaos is both temptation and blasphemy. Most in the Imperium deny its existence outright. To admit that such a place is real would mean admitting that the Aeldari, alien, mistrusted, despised, possess wisdom greater than humanity's own. Yet, among the highest circles of the Inquisition, the library is no mere myth. It is an obsession. The Inquisition, secret guardians of the Imperium's soul, are divided into ordos, the Ordo Xenos, who watch the alien, the Ordo Hereticus, who hunt the witch, and the Ordo Malleus, whose charge is the endless war against demons. It is the Malleus above all who whisper of the Black Library, for within its shadowed halls are said to lie the true names of demons, the keys to their unmaking, the strategies by which entire incursions may be undone. For inquisitors who have stared into the abyss of chaos, who have seen worlds lost to demonic flame, the library is no legend but a lifeline. Yet the library cannot be stormed. No fleet can besiege it, no army can breach it. It exists within the webway, beyond the reach of mortal navigation, hidden behind riddles only Harlequins may answer. Thus, inquisitors have learned that if they are to glimpse its lore, they must treat not with walls of stone, but with masks of jest. They must bargain with the Harlequins. Such bargains are never straightforward. The Harlequins are not merchants of knowledge, and they do not grant it lightly. When an inquisitor seeks their counsel, it is never certain whether they will receive answers, riddles, or mockery. Some are led along elaborate performances, their questions woven into plays enacted upon ruined stages. Others are confronted with duels, their worth measured by blade or wit. A few, very few, are permitted entry into the Black Library itself, their minds touched with truths too vast for words. These chosen rarely speak of what they saw, for the knowledge itself is a burden. There are tales whispered in the vaults of the Ordo Malleus of inquisitors who emerged changed. Some returned triumphant, armed with secrets that allowed them to banish demons otherwise invincible. They spoke of names carved into crystal tomes, of prophecies that guided their hand, of warnings that saved whole sectors from corruption. Yet others returned broken, their minds unhinged by what they had witnessed. For to glimpse the true scale of chaos, to see its nature unfiltered, is to stand upon the edge of madness. Not all can endure. One of the most famous tales concerns Inquisitor Chevak, a man of the Ordo Malleus whose legend lingers even in the 41st millennium. Chevak is said to have been permitted entry into the Black Library itself, guided by Harlequins through endless halls of shifting knowledge. What he saw there, none can fully recount, but it is whispered that he was entrusted with lore vital to the war against chaos. For this, he was hunted not only by demons but by his own peers, who feared that what he carried was too dangerous to remain in mortal hands. Chevak became a wanderer, a fugitive whose very survival was owed to the Harlequins, who sometimes shielded him, sometimes mocked him. His story is a reminder that the Black Library does not give gifts freely. It sets burdens upon those it deems worthy. The Imperium itself regards such dealings with suspicion. To treat with Xenos is heresy, punishable by death. Yet the Inquisition is above law, and necessity often outweighs purity. When demonic incursions rise, when warp storms sweep sectors into ruin, some Inquisitors will risk damnation itself to seek the Harlequins' counsel. It is a paradox at the heart of the Imperium that the greatest weapon against chaos may lie not in the God Emperor's hand, but in the hidden vault of their alien enemies. The Harlequins, for their part, are not allies of mankind. They do not aid out of compassion, nor out of duty. They serve Segorach, and through him, the Black Library. When they grant immortal knowledge, it is because the balance of fate demands it, because one thread must be spared for the greater tapestry. The Harlequins never explain. They never justify. They only laugh, and the laughter lingers long after they have departed. It is not only the Ordo Malleus who seek the library. The Ordo Xenos, too, has taken interest, for to them the library is proof of the Aeldari's true power. Some within their ranks fear that the knowledge preserved there could allow the alien race to rise again, to reclaim the dominance they once held. Others see opportunity. If humanity could seize even a fragment of that lore, the balance of power might tilt forever. Such thoughts are dangerous. Many who pursue them vanish into silence, their names struck from record. Even the Ordo Hereticus has whispers of the library. To them, it is an abomination, proof that knowledge of chaos is being preserved rather than purged. They argue that the library is itself a corruption, that no secret of the warp can be recorded without staining the soul. There are those among them who would see it destroyed if they could find it, if they could breach it. Yet this is folly, for no mortal flame can reach its shelves, no army can march upon its doors. Thus the library remains, beyond reach, beyond control, beyond conquest. It is not a prize to be won, but a presence to be acknowledged. The Inquisition may seek it, may bargain with its keepers, may even glimpse its halls, but they can never own it. To try is to invite ruin. Still, in the endless war against chaos, there are few weapons that endure. Armies falter, fortresses fall, heroes die. Only knowledge endures, fragile though it may be. And so, the Inquisition continues to whisper of the Black Library, to dream of its shelves, to send seekers into the dark. Some return with fragments of prophecy, others with minds broken, and still others never return at all. The Harlequins laugh, for to them it is all part of the dance without end. The Imperium struggles, bargains, and breaks, but the library abides. It has endured since the fall of the Aeldari, and it will endure long after the Imperium itself is dust. To bargain with it is to glimpse eternity, and eternity does not yield to mortal hands. Chapter 7. Relics within the Black Library. The Black Library is more than walls of shadow and shelves of thought. It is a treasury of memory, a reliquary of secrets too dangerous for the galaxy beyond. Those who speak of it rarely agree on its form, for to each mind it appears differently. Some describe endless shelves of tomes bound in crystal and starlight. Others recall rivers of luminous script flowing like water, each word a memory. A few whisper of vaults carved in shadow, where relics of impossible power are entombed. Whatever its appearance, one truth is constant. Within the Black Library are kept the fragments of knowledge that could shape the fate of empires. Among the most feared are the true names of demons. Every demon of chaos is bound to a name, a syllable of power that holds its essence. To speak it is to wound the demon, to bind it, to banish it, but such knowledge is perilous. To utter a true name is to draw the demon's gaze, to invite its hatred for eternity. The Harlequins preserve these names in the library, not as weapons to be wielded, but as warnings, for each syllable is a shard of eternity. There are tomes within the library that record the wars of the Old Ones, those architects who first shaped the races of the galaxy. These accounts are not written in words, but in visions that impress themselves upon the mind. To witness them is to stand upon battlefields where suns were extinguished as pawns, to see the Necrontyr rise and the Satan devour. Few who glimpse these records return unchanged, for to see the scale of that conflict is to feel the fragility of all that came after. Prophecies are stored in abundance, for the Black Library is as much a chronicle of futures as of pasts. There are scrolls that speak of rifts yet to open, of wars yet to burn, of heroes yet unborn who will rise and fall. Some of these prophecies are fragmented, half-legible, their meanings clouded by metaphor. Others are sharp as crystal, names and dates inscribed with dreadful certainty. It is said that even the birth of the Great Rift, the sundering of the galaxy in the 41st millennium, was foreseen within its halls, though none beyond the Harlequins were ever allowed to read the warning. Among the relics preserved are objects of terrible beauty. One such is the mask of veiled echoes, said to carry the voice of an Aeldari goddess long devoured by Slaanesh. When donned in performance, it allows the wearer to speak with her tone, to repeat words once lost to oblivion. Yet the mask is never shown beyond the library, for to hear that voice is to remember not only the goddess's grace, but also her death. Another relic spoken of is the Shard of Cain, a fragment of the bloody-handed god shattered during his battle with Slaanesh. This shard burns with fire that does not consume, a fragment of divine fury preserved against the abyss. The Harlequins guard it closely, for in its presence even demons recoil. Yet it is too volatile to be wielded as weapon. It is a reminder that even gods may be broken, and that their remnants are as dangerous as their fall. There are also relics not of Aeldari origin. The library has absorbed fragments of human lore, artifacts seized by Harlequins before the Inquisition could burn them. Among these is rumored to be the Testament of Asterius, a book penned by a rogue psyker whose visions spanned millennia. The tome is said to describe in exacting detail the siege of Terra, though it was written centuries before the heresy began. How such foresight was possible, none can say. The book rests now in the Black Library, a reminder that humanity too has glimpsed fate, though rarely understood it. Legends tell also of the Mirror of Sorrows, an artifact that reflects not the face of the viewer, but the moment of their greatest regret. To gaze into it is to confront one's failure, one's weakness, one's doom. Harlequins use it in their performances, showing to audiences not themselves but their people's fall, reflected again and again. To mortals, such a vision would shatter the mind. To the Aeldari, it is a lesson that regret is eternal, and only remembrance can shield against its repetition. The library contains also the most complete records of Slaaneş's birth, preserved in forms no mortal tongue could describe. These are not tales to be told, but experiences impressed upon the soul. To walk among them is to feel the scream that tore the galaxy, to know the terror of gods devoured, to taste the despair of billions as their souls were consumed. Harlequins keep these visions as the purest warning, ensuring that their people never forget what was lost in that instant. Yet, not all within the library is terror. There are fragments of hope as well. Among them are prophecies of Enigmatic, the god of the dead, whose birth may one day end Slaaneş's dominion. These scrolls are guarded with utmost secrecy, for they speak of resurrection and endings both. Some Aeldari whisper that the library itself waits for Enigmatic, that its lore is not merely memory but preparation for the final war. To mortals, such relics would seem unfathomable. A guardsman could not comprehend a prophecy that spans 10 millennia. A Mechanicus adept would go mad attempting to transcribe a shard of divine essence. Yet, within the Black Library, all are preserved equally: names, visions, regrets, prophecies. It is not a vault of power, but of balance. Every relic, every tome is part of the great chorus of remembrance, ensuring that nothing, neither triumph nor ruin, fades into silence. The Harlequins guard these relics not with locks or chains, but with performance. To reach the library is to pass through their plays, their riddles, their dances. Those who arrive are shown not shelves, but scenes. The relics are not displayed as trophies, but enacted as memories, their lessons given through story. In this way, the relics live, carried not in hands but in minds, passed not as objects but as roles. Thus the Black Library endures, a reliquary of secrets preserved against oblivion. To mortals it is myth, to inquisitors it is obsession, to the Aeldari it is both shame and hope. Within its halls lie the echoes of gods, the regrets of empires, the prophecies of futures yet unborn. To touch even one relic is to feel eternity press upon the soul. To linger among them is to know that the galaxy itself is but one story in an endless script. Chapter 8. Echoes of the End Times. The Black Library is not only a vault of what was, but also of what may be. Within its shadowed halls lie records of futures still unformed, of prophecies whispered across the millennia. To the Aeldari, these are not idle dreams, but grim certainties, for their seers have long foreseen that their people walk toward an ending written in sorrow. The library preserves these prophecies not as comfort, but as warning, that even memory may not save them from the last war. Foremost among these visions is the Rana Dandra, the final battle of the Aeldari. It is said that in the Rana Dandra, every fragment of their people will be gathered: craftworlders and exodites, Harlequins and Drukhari, corsairs and wanderers. Even the Inari, followers of the nascent god of the dead, will stand beside them. They will fight not for survival, for by then survival will be impossible, but for vengeance. Against the endless hosts of chaos they will march, every mask donned, every sword raised, every soul ablaze with memory. The Harlequins say that the dance without end will conclude in that moment, the final jest of Thagorak fulfilled, the tragedy played to its last act. The library preserves fragments of this battle in countless forms. Some describe it as a war fought in the warp itself, where gods and mortals clash as equals. Others envision it across dying stars, the galaxy itself the stage. All agree on its cost, that the Aeldari as they are will cease to be, their last spark consumed in the final blaze. Yet, through their extinction, something new will rise: Enigmatic, the god of the dead, born from the gathered souls of all their kind. Ennead is the most dangerous and hopeful prophecy preserved in the library. Unlike the gods born of excess and rage, Ennead is a god of release, of endings that bring freedom. It is said that when every Aeldari soul has passed into death, Ennead will awaken fully, wielding their collective essence as a weapon against Slaanesh. Where she who thirsts devours, he will liberate. Where she enslaves, he will unbind. The Harlequins whisper that Ennead is the last hope of their people, the only force that may end Slaanesh's reign. Already, fragments of this prophecy stir in the present. The Inari, a sect of Aeldari who worship Ennead, claim to have seen his shadow stir. Their leader, Yvraine, the daughter of Shades, is said to be his prophet, carrying fragments of his power. Whether she is a herald of salvation or a prelude to annihilation, the library does not say. The Harlequins neither confirm nor deny her visions, for to them all prophecy is part of the script, every act played until its conclusion. The Black Library does not reveal these prophecies freely. To humanity they are riddles at best, threats at worst. To the Aeldari they are heavy burdens. Yet the Harlequins ensure they are never forgotten. In performances across Craftworld and Comarach alike, they weave fragments of the Reanadandra into their dances. Audiences watch the fall of gods, the rise of Ennead, the clash of masks and demons, not always realizing they are glimpsing their own fate. Through art, the prophecy endures, alive in memory long before it arrives in truth. But the library holds not only Aeldari endings. Within its halls are records of other futures, the fall of the Imperium of Man, the rise of alien dominions, the spread of tyrannid hunger, until the stars themselves are devoured. Some prophecies conflict, branching into possibilities like the limbs of a tree. Others are stark and unchanging. One fragment describes Terra itself burning, the golden throne failing, and the Astronomican's light extinguished. Another speaks of an age when mortals wield the power of gods, reshaping the warp itself into their tool. Whether these visions are truth or warning, none beyond the Harlequins can say. The Imperium, were it to know these prophecies in full, would be torn apart. The Ecclesiarchy preaches eternal stability. The Inquisition enforces the illusion of permanence. To reveal that the Imperium itself is but one act in a longer play would shatter the faith of billions. Thus, the library remains silent, revealing only fragments when necessity demands. Even among the Aeldari, there are those who despair of the library's prophecies. To know one's doom and be unable to change it is a cruelty almost beyond endurance. Some argue that prophecy itself is the curse of their people, that their constant foreknowledge has made them passive in the face of fate. Yet the Harlequins laugh at such despair, for to them the end is not tragedy alone. The dance without end must conclude, but in its conclusion lies release. The echoes of the end times resonate beyond words. To stand within the Black Library and glimpse them is to feel the weight of inevitability. The shelves do not speak of salvation in the mortal sense. They do not promise survival, or empire, or dominion. They speak of memory carried to its conclusion, of a people who will not go quietly, of a jest played even at the edge of annihilation. The Reanadandra will come, Ennead will rise, Slaanesh will face her reckoning. These truths are written in the library's silence, inscribed in riddles and performance, carried by masked wanderers who laugh even as they mourn. The end will be bitter, but it will not be meaningless. For in the end, the Aeldari will achieve what they could not in life: unity. Thus the Black Library endures, not merely as record of past failures, but as witness to futures not yet born. It is the echo of endings, the whisper of last battles, the silent chorus of a people walking toward their fate with eyes open. In its shadowed halls, time itself seems to fold, past and future entwined in endless remembrance. To mortals, such prophecy is unbearable. To the Aeldari, it is truth, and to the Harlequins, it is performance. The library does not despair of the end. It records it, prepares for it, and ensures that when the curtain falls, it will not be in silence, but in song. The Black Library has no end, no final page, no closing volume. It is not a place that can be exhausted, for it is not bound by time. To step within its shadow is to feel eternity press close, reminding every soul that knowledge is both burden and blessing. It preserves what was lost, it warns of what is to come, and it binds both into a silence deeper than words. The Aeldari, broken though they are, know this truth well. Their empire is gone, their gods devoured, their worlds scattered. Yet, through the Black Library, they endure in memory. Their failures are written, their tragedies remembered, their prophecies preserved. The library does not offer them salvation, but it offers meaning, and sometimes meaning is all that remains. To the Imperium, the library is rumor, half believed and half feared. Inquisitors whisper of it, some daring to seek its halls, others denouncing it as corruption incarnate. To most, it is myth, and perhaps that is best. For the Black Library is not meant for mortal hands. It is not a weapon to be wielded, but a mirror held up to eternity. To look too closely is to risk being broken by what one sees. The Harlequins continue their endless dance, masks shifting, laughter echoing. They alone walk the library's corridors freely, carrying its secrets upon stages across the stars. Through their performances, its truths are never forgotten. Through their riddles, its warnings are never silenced. They are jesters yet also wardens, and in their hands the library remains inviolate. In the end, the Black Library is not about victory. It is not about conquest or survival. It is about remembrance. In a galaxy where empires rise only to fall, where gods hunger and mortals perish, the library whispers that nothing is ever truly lost if it is remembered. Knowledge can be hidden, guarded, carried forward, waiting for the hour when it is needed. The stars may burn out. The Imperium may crumble. The Aeldari may vanish into myth. Yet the Black Library endures, silent, patient, eternal. It waits in shadow, holding within it the sorrow of ages and the hope of endings yet to dawn. It is the whisper that remains when all else is gone, the last echo in a galaxy of silence. And in that whisper lies defiance, the quiet truth that even at the end of all things, memory will speak.